Mr. President, welcome back to the Kudlow Show. We appreciate it very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Larry.
I want to begin. Today's jobs numbers come out, and the top line was very solid jobs report. Americans are working. But, you know, you look under the hood, it's the same stuff. I just want to read a couple things. Full-time jobs down almost 500,000. Part-time jobs up 800,000. Manufacturing jobs down again. 825,000 native-born jobs lost, 1.2 million foreign-born jobs gained. These are uncomfortable statistics. There's something wrong. There's something unbalanced about all these numbers and where the country's going.
Well, especially so since, as you see, and I guess you probably read one of the numbers where the illegal migrants that are coming into the country are getting the jobs. They're getting most of the jobs. And the citizens aren't getting the jobs. And the other thing that you don't know what to believe anymore, because 818,000 jobs 2 months ago was a fraud. They put in 818,000 extra jobs, and it got wiped out. They said they made a mistake. That wasn't a mistake. That was done on purpose. And it was supposed to come out, that number, the wipeout was supposed to be after the election. But you had a whistleblower that came out and announced that they defrauded the country. So you say, like, how does that happen? I've never heard of a thing. I've heard of they're off by 10,000, 15,000. They were off by 818,000 jobs. So when is that going to come out?
Yeah, well, it's probably be revised down. I mean, it's hard to know. We've never seen anything like it, as you point out.
You've never seen numbers like this the last 7 months.
Manufacturing jobs continue to decline, and the manufacturing ISM purchasing managers continues to decline. We haven't had any manufacturing jobs in 2 years. We're in a manufacturing slump, probably a manufacturing recession. Is this attributable, do you think, to Biden-Harris policies?
Yes. It's attributable to the fact that other countries are ripping us off, including Mexico, and a lot of them, China always, but Mexico's really doing a big number on us. We have companies moving down to Mexico. They're making product. They're selling it in, and nobody's talking to them. Nobody's speaking about it. Nobody's putting tariffs on them. If you put tariffs on those companies, you wouldn't have them leaving our country. They're leaving us, going to Mexico, right across the border, building a plant and selling things back into our country. And you can't let them do that. That's what tariffs are for. You put tariffs on, they won't be doing that. And it's like not complicated. It's really simple.
So your plan, we're going to get to the tax hikes for Kamala Harris, but your plan, you will offer 15%, 21 to 15% business tax rate, which would be the lowest I think we've ever had in this country, and make us among the probably the lowest, or maybe the second lowest around the entire world. That's how competitive we'd be. But you got to produce it here. You've got to produce it here. Now, I think that would go a long way towards solving some of these various problems about foreign-born versus native-born, manufacturing jobs, and things of that sort. Tell me more about that vision. Tell me more what goes along with that.
So first of all, I brought it from 39 down to 21, okay? It was 39, which was way too high and not competitive, and we were doing very badly. I brought it down to 21. And interestingly, just before I get to the 15, at 21, we did much more business the following year than we did at 39. In other words, we took in more revenue with 21 than we did because it was like, that was after the tax cuts. They call them the Trump tax cuts, which were phenomenal, and just about everybody admits that. Now I'm going to take it from 21 to 15, but you have to make your product here. And I'm going to guard them because a part of it is, as per your first question, we have to guard our companies. Now they're going to have low taxes, low environmental costs, low energy, because I'm going to get the energy, drill, baby, drill. We're getting the energy way down. We'll have the lowest energy. We're going to have low environmental costs because we're going to move. Look, people are tied up for years on environmental. I'm going to do an expedited environmental review.
Permitting, quick permitting.
Permitting.
You had it once in the first term,
one of the reasons,
and then they undid it.
I mean, I was approving plants at levels that nobody's ever seen. We're talking about plants that normally wouldn't get done. But then if you do your product here, you go from 21 to 15. If you don't, you pay 21. 15 makes us the most competitive. There are some countries, but not like this. There are a few countries that are slightly less. But 15 makes us so competitive. Everyone's going to come rushing into our country, but we're going to protect them once they're here with tariffs, so that if somebody wants to make their product outside of our country and sell it in, they have to pay a tariff, a substantial tariff, depending on, all different, because it depends on the country. It depends on where they are, how they're doing. And we have a case of India, which charges us massive, massive tariffs. You look at Harley-Davidson and companies that went to India because they didn't want to pay 150, 200%. Brazil charges us a lot. China, always China. And, I took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China. No president ever took in 10 cents, not even, and I mean it, 10 cents. We never took in any money. I took in hundreds of billions of dollars. And now China's totally out of control. We have a deficit with China now that I've never seen anything like it, what they're doing with China. But we have a deficit with the country. We will take it from a deficit. We'll knock that down. When you start charging people tariffs, our country was the richest when we were doing tariffs. That was the richest. This was in the 1880s and 90s. We were if you go back to the dates and you look, our country was so rich, we didn't know what to do with all the money we had. They had committees, the Great Tariff Committee of 1887. This was a committee that was set up to, where do you give all this? What do you do with all the money?
This is William McKinley.
That was under McKinley.
He was the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee.
Yeah.
The McKinley Tariff of 1890.
He was a big tariff.
I read the whole biography.
Yeah.
It was 600 pages.
Well, he made money and Roosevelt spent it. So, Roosevelt gets credit for being a great president. McKinley was actually a great president. He was assassinated. You know why he was assassinated? Because he was charging all these countries money, probably. Who the hell knows? But we were so rich. We had so much money they had committees set up on what to do with all the money. Wouldn't that be nice if we had that now? Now we give it away and we don't have it.
If you make money on these tariffs, would you then allocate it to lower taxes?
Lower taxes and paying off debt.
Yeah. How about this?
And you will pay off a lot of debt.
What about this idea? Let's come back to the 15% corporate rate, which would be a phenomenon. I mean, you'd win the global race for capital. You'd win the global race.
Well, you have to, but you have to do other things.
Money would come pouring in here.
Yeah.
But you mentioned John Deere Company. It's a venerable, old, great American company.
Yeah.
But if they're going to move plants to Mexico and then try to sell stuff back to the U.S., sneak in under, for example, the USMCA tariff schedule, you would charge them a 200% tariff.
Or 100%.
All right,
enough.
100%.
I would charge them enough that it would no longer make sense to go to Mexico.
And so they wouldn't do it. They
moved a big operation to Mexico. And they come in and they don't have to pay almost pay very little tax. So they're going to make it in Mexico and they're going to sell it in here. And we get killed. All we do is lose jobs. And by the way, that's been happening for years. I stopped it during mine. Then we had to fix COVID. We had to work on the COVID situation. But we had the greatest economy in history. Companies were moving back in like nobody's ever seen. Everything was great.
So that's how
we had the greatest economy in history.
That's how you'd negotiate, though. That's the point I'm so driving at.
John Deere.
John Deere won't do it because you're threatening. I mean, you will jack up their tariffs, okay? They won't do it.
It wouldn't be a threat.
Now, to some extent,
in fact,
you're negotiating right now by saying this on the campaign trail, all right? You have an excellent chance of becoming president. They're getting the message. So this is where you will use tariffs to negotiate, sometimes on trade, in this case, maybe on other things like remain in Mexico or perhaps China or perhaps other countries. I don't think people understand that. That's why I'm raising the question.
A tariff is a beautiful thing, but it's got a bad image. It needs you to fix the image. A tariff, we stop wars with tariffs. I mean, I had cases where I told a country they were being very aggressive with another country. It had nothing to do with us. I just don't like seeing dead people, okay? And they were going to go to war. And I said, if you go to war, and they do a lot of business with the United States, I'm putting 100% tariff on everything you do, any business you do with us. No, this has nothing to do. I said, it does have. I stopped a war. Will I get Nobel Prizes? Never. I mean, look what we did with the Abraham Accords, how good that was. But you can stop wars with tariffs. The word tariff, if properly used, not stupidly used, But we used them, and that was when our country was the richest. And, a lot of people say, well, but you had the Depression in Well, the tariffs were put on in 1932. The Depression had long started. We went to the income tax system. We would be able to cut taxes for the people in this country and charge other countries for the use of our country, for the pillage of our country, for the taking of our jobs, because that's what they're doing. And nobody's protected our country. So when I say the 15%, and I had a lot of calls when I gave the speech and mentioned for the first time the 15, I had calls from the top analysts in the country and the world, guys that are on your show, saying, where did you ever come up with that idea? Because the concept is 15, but you have to make your product here. Who gave you that idea? I said, I did. I gave me that idea. And they said, that idea is incredible. Because but you also have to protect that, because you have other countries, because they have no labor, no this, no that, that can come in and undercut you. And you know what they do, Larry? They undercut you. They drive your businesses out of business, and then they come in for a much higher number.
And you're still for reciprocity, the concept of reciprocity.
If somebody's charging us 100, we charge them 100. If China charges us on a car 100%, we charge them on a car 100%. Right. It's very simple. I have a certain senator named Lindsey Graham, and he's not into this as much as he is other things.
Yes.
And he's a nice guy, good guy. And he cares. He loves the country. Even though he's a progressive, that's okay. These are minor details. But I said, so Lindsey, let's talk reciprocity. He talks about trade. He says, well, I'm not so much into trade. Tell me. I said, a country is charging us 100% tariff. We're going to charge them for a similar product 100% tariff. He goes, so they charge us, we charge them? You got my vote. It's just simple. But we have guys, even in Congress, that for whatever reason, they don't want to do it. They actually say it's not fair trade. And I say, you're right, it's not fair trade, not fair trade for us. If we do this, we could become overnight a power again economically. We'll never be a power unless we do it. Unless we charge and unless because, we've been giving foreign countries such benefits over the years. South Korea, we're basically paying for their military. I had them paying billions of dollars. I went to them and said, you're not paying anything. You got to pay. And I had them paying billions of dollars. And I hear Biden gave it up for whatever reason. But look at the advantage they have when you do that. We have been helping countries. We're still helping countries come back from the Second World War. We help Korea come back from the Korean War. But we never did anything about it. In other words, we've been helping them for many, many decades. It's time we stop. They're a money machine. It's time we stop. And be fair, but it's time we stop. We are helping countries.
But you would work a deal out with Korea.
Work a deal. I could work a deal. I already did. I worked a deal, and then they gave it away. You worked a
deal out with
Biden
Japan in return also.
Biden gave it away.
Yes.
They agreed to pay me billions of dollars. It was all done. They started paying. Then when he came in, they cut it. And I hear that they're paying nothing again. Were they happy? Were they thrilled? Would they say they like me as opposed to like a Biden where they can get ripped off? I can't imagine they'd say they love me.
South Korea is still an ally of the United States.
Sure, it's an ally, but, on trade, it's not an ally. Right. In trade, it's an enemy. It's an enemy. Some of the worst people we have in terms of trade are our allies. Japan is, an ally, right? And I made a deal there with Abe, who's a great man who got executed, who got, just horrible what happened. He was assassinated, but he was great. He was a great leader, too. And because I liked him so much, I probably made a softer deal than I would have normally made. But Japan, rips us. They all rip. Almost every country rips us, and I stopped it. Now, China's one, but, it's not just China.
Policy in a second term.
No, you have to protect. First, the companies move in, but then you have to protect them, and you protect them with tariffs. And they either pay the tariff or they move a plant to the United. I want China to build plants for car plants, as an example. I want China to build car plants here, not in Mexico.
Yes. Well.
And it's very simple. It's amazing that it's not done. And people come to me and they say, wow, that makes sense. But you have congressmen and people that are against it. I said to one man, he's no longer in politics. He happened to be from Pennsylvania, happened to be a senator from Pennsylvania. I said, so let me get this straight. If China's charging us 100% tariff for the similar product, could I charge them 75? No. Why? It's not free trade. I said, okay, could I charge them 50%? They're charging. No, it's not. Could I charge them 25 or even 10%? No. I said, are you a stupid person or what's wrong with you? And he never ran for office again.
It becomes free trade.
Let me tell you, he never ran for office again.
I think theoretically, with reciprocity in trade negotiations,
everybody gives up and you go back to nothing.
Yes.
Okay.
I know people.
This is a guy that people said was smart. He never ran for office because I wouldn't give him an endorsement. Because I said anybody that says that. So think of it. We're paying them 100%. We make them pay 100%. Two things. One of two things are going to happen. We'll either collect the money, or they're going to say, let's not pay any. Let's just go back to basics, right? But there are a lot of cases where they're charging us a tremendous amount. We charge them nothing. They're making a fortune. And by the way, hence we have the $35 trillion. We can start cutting into that. We can have. We have a tremendous deficit in this country. We've had it for for decades, right? But we have a tremendous deficit in this country. We can go to almost no deficit almost immediately.
Let's talk. You're right,
Larry. One thing, we've treated the world nice for a long time. We've been run by stupid people that allowed us to get into this situation, and it's about time these other countries play a little ball with us. And all I want is fairness. And if they're fair, we have something that you've never seen in this country till, literally the 1880s, the 1890s. But that was the time. You hear about wealth, but we were giving a lot away for a long time. That was the time we were the richest. We were so rich. And it was all based on tariff. There was no income tax. It was all based on countries coming. And if you look at some of McKinley's words, he was very beautiful in the word, we will not allow the pillage of our country. And if they're going to take our jobs, and if they're going to do this and that, they've got to pay for it. And all I'm saying is that they've got to pay for it.
You've talked about a golden age. You've talked about new industrialism and basing it around your lower taxes and deregulation and, of course, liquid gold and drill, baby, drill. So there you have it. Now, there's a new ad up. Kamala Harris is saying taxes are going to have to go up. She's just saying that. And the ad, calculations are almost $3,000 per family based on her tax plan. She would do things that would drive investment away from this country, destroy businesses, damage households. Some people say it would even lead to a depression. There's a difference. You're the tax cutter. You're trying for a new golden age in this country. She's a tax hiker in order to pay. She wants another $2 trillion in entitlements and spending. She said that in one of her economic speeches when she declared her candidacy. There's a big difference between the two of you. She wants to tax people, but also businesses into other countries. You know better than anybody, probably better than anybody on the planet, because you know every head of every company. You have interviews with them every once in a while, right? These are people that are probably more loyal to their company and their shareholders than they are to a country. Mm-hmm. And what happens is when you charge too much, what's going to happen, they're going to leave other countries. They're coming back to us at the 15%. They're going to make the product here. But what happens is they're loyal to the company and the stock price. And when Europe and other places, look what happened with Ireland and the pharmaceutical industry. They just stole it when we were, so many of these companies are located in Ireland. And it was all based on tax policy. And if you follow Kamala, if you follow her, she doesn't know anything about it. Look, this woman destroyed maybe the best city in the country, San Francisco. Now, it wasn't over tax. It was over defund the police and all sorts of other things, right?
It was, if you rob a store, you can go up to $950, and after that we'll start getting angry at you. That was not a good policy either. She would be a disaster. But just so you understand, if you followed her policy, you will end up in a 1929 style depression. 100% certain. And companies will flee, and jobs will flee, and everything's going to flee. We're going to have you won't have a country left. And she's the only person I've ever seen that is campaigning on a massive tax hike. I've never seen that before. Very interesting.
The Tax Foundation priced it out. She'd lose 800,000 jobs. But a lot of people have said her wealth taxes, again, this unrealized capital gains, maybe that doesn't apply to every American. I understand it. Although if you own a farm or you own a ranch or you build a small business and they're going to make you pay an arbitrary tax on your capital, you'll have to raise money, sell, stocks will collapse. That's going to cause more selling. I mean, that is a depression.
And people will leave the country.
I mean, smart people have talked about it. Steve Forbes was on my show the other night. He's a common sense guy.
Right.
He said it would lead to a depression. So it's not nothing.
People will leave the country. They used to leave the state.
Yes.
Now they leave the country.
They just go, right.
No, in the old days, they'd leave the state. They go to some other state. They wouldn't like New York, and they'd go someplace. Now they leave the country. It would be a disaster.
But you still want the dollar to be the world's reserve currency.
Has to be. That's the other thing. You lose the world currency. We will no longer have the currency. If that happens, we're no longer the world reserve currency. We're not that incredible thing that we were. It's rapidly going. Because we lose Russia, we lose this one, we lose that one. China would love to take over. I mean, the one that wants to take over is China with the yuan. They'd love to take over. You know that very well. If we lose that, we become somewhat of a third world country because we have no borders right now. We're going to have strong borders in hopefully a few months. We have no borders, need great borders, and you really need a free press. We really don't have a free press. You're free. There are some people that are free, but not too many. The press is very dishonest. I get to see it all the time because I will talk to them about something, give them the exact information that they're looking for. This is exacting stuff. And then they will purposely write it wrong. It's amazing.
Amazing.
So, but you know that.
I understand. I know. I've had that experience. You've been visiting the hurricane victims and trying to raise money privately. FEMA now is saying, Alexandria Mayorkas, they don't have enough money for any additional hurricanes. We all thought they were chock full of money. That money's been given away to illegal immigrants almost one by one. I don't understand this. This is a perversion of policy.
So you don't understand it because it's not understandable.
I don't get it.
In all fairness, it's not understandable. So we now have no money that was supposed to be used for tragedy, for hurricanes. And this was a tragic hurricane. This was maybe the worst hurricane we've ever had. And he's got no money. And we said, what happened to all the money? They were given billions for this. He spent it on illegal migrants coming into the country, a big percentage of which are murderers. I don't know if you saw 13,099 murderers. Many of them, I think 22%, they said, killed more than one person. Some killed more than 5 people. These people are now living happily in our country, okay? And only bad things are going to happen. Terrorists. They have 645,000 very bad criminals coming in with all of the others. And then they have 21 million people plus. And a lot of those people aren't the greatest either. So we are poisoning our country. Our country is being poisoned. Our country is being ruined. It's being ruined by these people. And they took billions of dollars and used it for settlements of people that came in, many of which are criminals. And the people in North Carolina and South Carolina and Georgia and Florida, Virginia, Tennessee, there's no money for them. Yeah. But they're giving people, how about where they let them come in and stay in hotels and our veterans are sleeping outside of the main door to the hotel. And they're watching migrants go into a hotel and sleep in a suite and they're sitting on the sidewalk and our veterans, they're our great veterans. This is the worst administration. Let me tell you, if they were modestly good. I wouldn't have even run. This is the worst administration.
But they spent this emergency money on illegal.
They stole it. They stole it.
This is also perversion of what the congressional authority was.
And they're trying to get those people to vote, Larry. They're trying to get those people to vote, just so you understand. They're trying to get them on the voter rolls. They want to put them on the Social Security rolls, which will destroy Social Security. This is the worst president in history. This is the worst administration in history. And she's worse than him. And actually, it's going to be hard to say this because he's pretty bad. She's actually less bright than he is. She has no clue what the hell she's doing. That's why she never does an interview. She never does a press conference because she can't talk. I watched Oprah, where she was interviewed on Oprah. She can't talk. She can't open. She can't. How do you deal with President Xi of China, who's a fierce person? Somebody said, "What's he like?" He's a fierce person. He is very fierce. But Putin and all these people. She does Oprah. If you watch that, it's like, what are we dealing with? She won't do a news conference. Look, Biden is brighter than she is. We got a problem.
Well,
and then you look at the vice president. How about that? J.D. Vance was great.
J.D. was
top student at Yale Law School, graduated with honors.
He did you proud.
No, he was great.
He did you proud. You chose him. He did you proud.
And I knew I was getting a very smart guy. But how do you compare that with this guy that calls himself a knucklehead? He says that he's a knucklehead. He actually says that it's. Can he be president someday?
I want to talk about Elon Musk for a minute.
It's great.
Who's come out strongly for you. And this business, you talked about the New York Economic Club a couple weeks ago. So Elon wants to help with a efficiency commission. We had one like that in the Reagan years, many years ago. You can use that. I mean, to me, this would be, not only would you pare back unnecessary spending, but you'd have an opportunity, I think, sir, to go into these bureaucracies. I mean, you've got domestic bureaucracies. They have tenure. They don't use Congress. They go off on their own. They're very liberal. They're very left. You've got issues in the FBI. You've got issues in the CIA. You've got issues in the Secret Service. I mean, to me, the Elon Musk Commission could be a phenomenal weapon for better government and better growth.
He'd be great. And, you were telling me the other day, I got a lot of thank yous from North Carolina, from Georgia in particular, from maybe North Carolina. But they both have the problem. North Carolina is a disaster, what's happened there. And, the response has been the worst ever. It's been worse than Katrina, they say. That destroyed a certain person's reputation. I'll be nice and not mention the name, but it destroyed the reputation.
Yes.
This is worse. The response here is worse. And they have no money on top of everything else. But they came to me and they said, "Do you know Elon Musk?" I said, "Yes." And they said, is there anything you can do to help us with Starlink? Because they have in North Carolina and in Georgia and in some others too, they have no communication whatsoever. All of the poles are down. All of the wires are down. They're all lying in the mud, right? And I said, "Well, what can I do?" They said, "We need help." And I called Elon, and I'm telling you, it was amazing. The call wasn't even over, and Starlink units were being delivered to North Carolina and now to Georgia. Georgia called me a little bit later, and I said, "We'll get them." And they were very happy. The governor of Georgia is actually working very hard. Everybody was so happy. Elon delivered so quickly. I'm telling you, the phone wasn't, I was getting calls, "Thank you very much." The call's not even over yet. And I said, "That's great, Elon. Thank you. It's a great thing, Starlink." But interestingly, we're hooking up internet out in the country, and they're spending billions and billions of dollars. So far, they haven't hooked up one home. He can do this with Starlink. $40
billion unspent, in part because they didn't have the DEI requirements.
And you can do that through the satellites, and you don't have.
And they insulted Elon, and now they're going to need him to restore power.
He was great. He came through. He does come through. He would be incredible on that commission, and we'll.
Well, that's the thing, and you not only cut spending. I think you can take a strong look at some of these agencies, and you know the ones I'm talking. I mean,
Yeah.
I mentioned them a moment ago that really are not doing their job. They've become very political.
Well, the one thing we want to do is education. We want to move education back to the states.
Right.
We'll spend less than half. You have to see Washington. It seems like every building's Department of Education. For what? If you take a state, Iowa or Indiana or Idaho, or states that really run well, you let them run their education. So just quickly, so we're among the worst in the world in education. They rate 40. We're 40, 38, 39 always. We're in the worst. We're number one at one thing, cost per pupil. We spend so much more per pupil. So we know it's no good. It's not working. If you gave this to good states, all states, but good states, you'd end up having 35 states that would be. So number one is like Norway, Denmark, Sweden. By the way, China is always in the top 5. It's pretty good with 1.4 billion people. But those 4 and a couple of others are always in the top 5. If you sent this money to states that are very well run, we know the states. They have no debt. They have no problem. They don't even know what people are talking about. They have low taxes. 35 states, maybe even a little more than that, will be great. Now, Gavin Newsom won't do a good job. Others won't do. It's California. Others won't do a good job. Florida would do a great job. You give it to Ron. Florida would do a good job. All of these states, they will be the equivalent of Norway, Denmark, Sweden. Now, then you're going to have some that are going to be laggards, and you'll help them out, and you'll do whatever you have to do, but they'll be laggards. But we will spend less than half the money, and we will have some unbelievable education going on.
And you're strong for school choice.
Totally for school choice. Got to have it.
Talked about it yesterday.
Yeah, you got to have it. School choice is very important. It's never talked about, but school choice is very important. It'll happen.
So let me just, you've been wonderful with your time, and I appreciate it. I personally appreciate it.
Well, I have to say to your audience, number one, he's getting great ratings. And number two, if he wasn't, I'd still do the show because I love him. But he did an unbelievable job. He was great. And I refuse to ask you in front of your audience, would you like to come back? Because you know you'll be invited.
Thank you,
But
sir.
Larry Kudlow has done a tremendous job in the administration. And then I'm so proud that you have such a successful show. So
yes, well, it's been a great ride.
I just don't know if they know how successful it is, right? I have to tell them.
Yes, thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Good job.
You're very kind. Success is the best revenge. Success will bring the country together. Success will unite the country. You talked a lot about it at the convention. You still see it that way. You still believe that.
Well, when I was running things, we had the greatest economy in the history of our country. And I will tell you that our country was coming together at the beginning so vicious. But we had a time, 2.5 years in, it was numbers that nobody's ever seen before.
That's right.
And people are calling me, they like to call themselves progressives or whatever, but people that were far left were calling me. They wanted to meet, they wanted to talk. Success, everybody, men, women, people with the highest degree, people with no college degree, no high school degree, all different groups, young people, old people. There wasn't one group that wasn't doing the best ever in the history of our country. And our country was doing the best ever in the history of our country. We were taking in a lot of money from China. We were taking a lot, with the tariffs and things, and taxes. But fairly, we were treating them fairly. My relationship be very good. I'm not sure they love me because of that, but we would have a very good relationship with China, a very good relationship. Larry, I had no wars.
That's right.
Now the whole world is blowing up.
That's right.
There was no war in the world. And Viktor Orban said, you get Trump back and he'll straighten things out, because they were all afraid of Trump. I don't want to say that, but they were all afraid of Trump. I would say maybe they respected me, but he said, not respect, they were afraid of him because they didn't know where he was coming from, and they were afraid. Now they're not afraid. They look at this group, these two people. Let me tell you, she will be a worse president than him. She will be a disaster. This country will go down. We won't have a country left. And I see the way they lie and the way they cheat and the way they've weaponized government, where they get the process. All they want to do, they will let somebody rob a bank. You're fine. You can do anything you want on the street. But they go after their political opponents. They go after religious people. They go after Catholics. I've never seen anything like it. They go after Jewish people. They hate Israel. They hate Jewish people. They hate Jewish people. And how can you have this in our country? How can you have this as your president? So we will see what happens. We're leading. I think we're doing very well. It was very unfair because they took somebody out who had 14 million votes. She had no votes. And they said, you know, after the debate I had with Biden, his numbers weren't very good. And they said, you're going to lose, you're getting out. They told him, you're getting out. He said no, and they said, you're getting out. They were going to play the 25th Amendment card. And he agreed to get out. Very unhappy. He's a very unhappy man right now. But it was a coup. But from my standpoint, I spent $200 million on fighting him. We took a 21-point lead, a very big lead. We're going to win, most likely, but we're going to win. All of a sudden, I have to fight somebody else. And they said honeymoon period. Well, now she's had the honeymoon period, and now people have found out she's a radical leftist. She's a Marxist. A lot of people don't know what a Marxist is, so you could say communist. Not the same thing, but it's close. She's very bad for this country. She will destroy this country.
Mr. President, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
And your wisdom.
Thank you very much.